the way, did you know if you look up the word brimstone in your dictionary, somewhere in that definition will also be the word sulfur? But here's the crazy part. These pale sulfur balls are found nowhere else in the world except in Gommorah. And could the reason for this be because it was only a one-time event when God's wrath fell on the people of Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, before I give you my opinion on this, and before I show you something totally mind-blowing, you need to see this evidence first. Apart from the millions of sulfur balls that are preserved between layers of sediment, this entire area, put simply, appears to be burnt. There are blackened rocks everywhere. Here you can also see this chalk-like material, which is not found anywhere else in Israel. And beneath this ash, Ron claims to have found gold dust that was vaporized by very hot temperatures. But check this out. These swirling patterns are thought to be caused by thermal ionization. If you ever see a building which has been faced under extreme temperatures, we're talking 5,000 degrees Celsius, you'll also see the same design, because effectively atoms are being energetically charged by these extreme temperatures to create this chemical reaction. Okay, let's ask the obvious question here. Isn't there another logical conclusion for all of this evidence? After all, sulfur, burnt ash and all of these things, they can be found next to a volcano, can't they? You're right. But the problem with that line of thinking is that no volcanic activity has ever been reported in this region. But the biblical story of Abraham and Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah has been believed by religions and cultures for thousands of years. And even unbelievers are struggling to find another rational explanation for this singed wilderness. In 1980, Walter Rast, a totally secular archaeologist with no religious bias, he was working for the University of Indiana, and he performed many excavations on this site. And after looking at all the evidence, even he stated that the only possible conclusion really could be the biblical accounts recorded in Genesis. Later, I'm going to tell you whether I think this is the real Sodom and Gomorrah. And I also want to draw your attention to this very interesting landmark, and I want you to see if you can guess which famous Bible character the locals claim it is. But can we just stay in Gommorah for one more moment, because I want to show you why Ron White and others believe this is where God's judgment fell on a rebellious people. They believe that the arrangements of the topography isn't natural, but rather hides clues to a previous civilization. For instance, the rock formations are at 90-degree angles, angular in shape, as if they were once buildings. Ron also believed that this was once an ancient sphinx, and this structure here could have been one of those mysterious ziggurats that we read about in history. The whole area, according to Ron, screams out it was once crushed by God's anger, and some people are even divided whether this configuration could have once been a pyramid. So, come on now, talk to me. Do you think what I've just shown you is enough evidence to convince you that this is the real Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, some people would argue that the next viewpoint, the next alternate location, the evidence for that is even stronger. In 2001, Dr. Steve Collins created a real stir in the archaeological world. He claimed that Sodom and Gomorrah was not in Gommorah, but rather in Tel El Haman in the Jordan Valley. Dr. Steve Collins, now driven by conviction, began an excavation on the site, and beneath the ground he discovered an ancient civilization that was suddenly wiped out. So what he did is he mapped out the lowest part of the upper city, and there he descended a 2 by 2 meter probe into the ground to test how deep the site was. Once he got beneath the Iron Age, he reached the Bronze Age, and there he found the most perplexing artifact. It was a storage jar, but it was a glazed storage jar. Why is this so confusing? Because glazing was only invented around 1000 AD, years after the biblical account of Sodom. So Dr. Steve Collins thought, brilliant. That means that my entire archaeological dig has been messed up by newer artifacts. But when one of his friends saw it, he recognised it instantly. This wasn't a man-made glazing, no, this was trinitite. Now, if you're also a little bit confused by that word, don't panic, because Dr. Steve had neither heard of this word, trinitite. So his friend explained, trinitite is where objects get crystallised with a glass-like layer when they are suddenly heated to over 4000 degrees. It's the kind of thing you'd expect if an asteroid blasted in the middle of the desert. And sure enough, his friend was right. The pottery was tested in a lab and it came back that it was from the Bronze Age. And also it showed signs that it had been hit by a huge heat blast. So, it was official. Dr. Steve Collins had become a rock star, pun intended, and he had attracted the attention of 21 scholars who also believed the 400 square kilometers around Tel Haman had been wiped out in the blink of an eye by an asteroid or something huge.